How's everybody? Can you hear me?
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you, Liz?
Good.
Chris, how are you?
Good, Tom. How are you?
Good.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, how you doing?
Very good.
Can you hear me?
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you, Liz?
Good.
Chris, how are you?
Good, Tom. How are you?
Good. I think that's a time delay. I think.
Hi, how you doing?
Very good. Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Chris, how are you?
Good, Tom. How are you?
Good. I think that's a time delay.
Hi, how you doing?
Very good. Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Chris, how are you? Is it supposed to be doing this?
I don't think so. So hang on, maybe it's because it's, you know why? I got a YouTube live up, that's why. I need to, yeah, it'll go away as soon as I get out of this.
Oh, all right.
You know why? I got a YouTube live up, that's why. I need to. Yeah, it'll go away as soon as I get out of it. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait.
Andrew did something so that I didn't have to, he doesn't have to be here to go live stream. So
Okay.
this meeting is live streaming right now. So once you get going, I'm gonna make you the host.
Okay.
So do you have people coming in or?
We should still have some more.
Actually, you're gonna be the co-host, just in case there's a problem, I can come back in. So you know how to let people in the meeting or?
It's been a while since I've done it. I
So at
think.
the bottom of the screen, you'll see participants.
Yep.
So if somebody new comes in, if you click on that, you'll see the three of us there.
Right.
You just have to admit them into the meeting.
Okay.
Okay. And then you should be fine. So I'll stick around until you get started anyhow, just to make sure you get it, all set. But, and this is being recorded, but it's live stream right now. And you can, once you start open your meeting, you can conduct a business. When you're done, we'll shut it down. Then the live stream goes away. It'll be saved for people to access it later. So,
Okay.
all right.
Okay.
How's things going otherwise?
So far, so good. Still healthy and all that.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm home this week because I picked it up last week. I tested positive, so.
Have you had any bad symptoms or just kind of?
No, just extremely
cold?
tired.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of weird ones going around. My
Uh,
entire family's had different strains of it, and luckily I haven't had anything.
Some people get the different strains too. It's not just you get one and you're done. You can get the
Yeah.
others.
I've
Yeah,
had
my
all,
sister had the headaches.
yeah, I didn't get that. I'm just extremely tired.
Yeah.
And I'm boosted and, all the shots and all that. I've done everything I'm supposed to. But I think it's gonna get us all eventually, but
That's what
Yeah.
they say because it's so contagious, right?
it is. So I still recommend everybody get the vaccines if they can. Obviously if there are medical issues or if there are religious issues, I understand that, but you gotta do everything you can to protect yourself these days.
How long will the town be doing the virtual meetings now?
So it's based on the governor. The governor, I don't know if this week has re-signed it for another 30 days. But I think it ends like the second week in February. Unless he signs it. And I won't know that till the day he re-signs the executive order. That's what, the last time, every 30 days, the governor would just re-sign it. And because it was so bad, we didn't ever have to worry about it getting we didn't have to worry about it expiring. We just kept going. But things got really good for a while, so it was nice to get away from this.
Yeah.
But believe me, I
It
don't
was
like
after-
these-
it was after
these
Christmas.
more than anybody else.
Yeah.
Hello, is there someone on the phone?
Yes, good evening, Tom Malinsky. How are you, everybody? Happy New
Hi,
Year.
Tom,
Tom.
yourself?
I'm sorry?
Hope you're
Hi, Tom.
doing well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing well, just keeping a low profile with COVID and stuff like that.
They say no matter
So I'm
what
all-
you do, it's so contagious you might get it anyways. You just never know.
I know. Well, I officially left Newark after 43 years of going back and forth. So because I figure I'd take a rest now, but I'm not resting. I got so many projects to do.
You don't
between
really
family,
retire.
I just had
No,
a
you don't.
program review today. A lot of people from DC came up, so people are still traveling.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, they like coming up to Newport. Well, even though it's wintertime, they don't like it that much. But
Bad news is the airlines still cancel flights kind of at random. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I know that's another thing.
Yeah, they're
It's
shorthanded.
kind of interesting situation the country has turned into. What's
Right.
happening?
Yeah.
We got time.
But,
Yeah, my daughter just had a car accident Saturday, and they can't even attempt to fix her car until March because there's no parts.
Wow.
Yep.
And she can't buy a
You
new
see.
one because there's only 2 that are floating around that are coming in, and they're selling off the lot as quick as they can get them in because they
they're
can't
selling
fix
off
the
a lot.
ones that are smashed up.
They talked about a person in California who bought a $50,000 SUV, and I think he paid $75,000, $25,000 above the amounts, somewhere around that rough order of magnitude, about $25,000 more just to get it. Well, he definitely has the money, but still, there's price gouging going on at the auto dealers because they perhaps have no choice, or they know there's competition out there and they can bring the price up.
Well, she said she could still get this at the regular price,
Yeah.
but it's,
Well,
first come, first served. Yeah.
So, hi, we've got somebody else on the phone.
Yeah, Tom, it's me.
Hi, Rich.
Oh, Richard.
Rich, how are
Yeah,
you?
listen, I can't Zoom because I had surgery last week for a groin hernia, and it's been a very tough week, and I can't sit for long, so I didn't bother with the Zoom video, so I can just talk on the phone and walk around if I have to.
Okay. All right. Well,
it's been a very uncomfortable week, trust me.
there's a person here. Hold on a second.
So do you see a Bowen?
Yep.
I don't know if that's one of your panelists or.
We'll see. I just admitted him or her. You're still trying to connect in, I guess.
I am connected on it.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, you're on
Okay.
fine. There's one more
Yep.
person trying to come in, but I think they're having audio trouble. Says they're still trying to connect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes that happens. It takes a little while for some people to get in. Depends on where they're located.
They also don't have the video on. If they can hear us, your video is X'd out. For who's calling in as Bowen.
So I don't know if there's a way on that to, like, when you hover over them, there's a blue bar that says more. You can ask
Right.
them to sometimes start their
Ask
video.
to start video.
Yeah, I just did it. I don't know if they'll do it because some people don't.
But their audio isn't working either. It's still trying to connect to audio.
Whoever the Bowens are, can you speak? We'll determine if we can hear you.
Oh,
Oh, they left.
Yeah.
Wrong number.
Might have been.
They might have thought it was a different meeting.
Yep, wrong meeting.
Okay, well, we've got a quorum in at 7, so we can start if there's other
Okay.
people that call in. I think I figured out how to let them in, Chris, from your
Okay.
instructions. So if you want to,
I'm gonna
Okay.
leave it on, if just yell. I'm gonna turn my video off, but
Okay.
yeah, when it comes time to end, how do I end it?
I'll take care of it. I'll come
You
over.
will? Okay,
All
all
right.
right.
Thank you.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. We haven't had a meeting since June, thanks to the virus, but hopefully we'll be able to have a few more now this way with this virtual type meeting, because I know some people are still a little bit nervous about getting together, especially with the real contagious version of the virus still out there. So I guess this will be our first one and hopefully not the last one for a while.
Yeah.
So this is our January 2022 already regular meeting. I don't see anybody from the public, so I don't think there are any public delegations tonight. So we can move on to, believe it or not, approval of the minutes. I already have posted these on the Secretary of State's website
Yep.
because we have to do that within a certain amount of time. But
And these are 6 months old now.
we officially should just approve them.
Yeah.
Yeah, close them out. It's history.
Yep.
Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make it. Go ahead.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Any further discussion on these minutes? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? It's unanimous, they're approved. Treasurer's report.
I believe we have 500.
Okay. I've got some ideas for that coming up, so we can go over those.
Hopefully we can do something with it.
Right.
Hey, Tom, I got a.
Yes, yes,
Tom?
sir. Yes, sir.
I know Tom is there, but who else is there besides our secretary's there? And who else?
Right.
Malinsky.
There's Liz, myself, Tom Malinsky, and yourself, and Chris Cotta's kind of monitoring it.
Oh, okay.
Wait, I've got somebody
So none
else
of
here.
the-
Hold on a sec.
So Connie isn't there, nor Brenda, right?
No. Brenda said she
Oh.
wouldn't be here because it was her birthday and she wasn't
Oh,
good
okay.
to
That's,
join. Connie, I don't know.
Gotcha.
I did not hear from Connie, so I don't know if she's here or not.
Oh, we got a Kenny
Right.
Mendez trying to click in.
Yeah, I've spoken to him. He's interested in the aquaculture stuff.
Having
Connie's
trouble.
around.
He's got the
Connie's
video
around.
up.
I was wondering if there was something wrong with Connie, but apparently Peter Moniz had emailed her about the trees, and he sent me a courtesy copy at the same time. So I guess Connie's around because we haven't seen her now for a long time. You know,
Connie
old
sent
school.
an email saying that she couldn't get online to join in, but she could phone in. But I don't think she.
Mhm.
The phone in instructions are on the
She
page.
can't. She can't Zoom.
Yeah. You have to have the camera and all that. So Kenny, hi, how are you? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thanks. How are you?
Great.
Hi.
Yourself?
Good, thanks. You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
I'll
thanks.
just let you know on the line, we have myself, Liz Cottrell, who's our secretary, Richard Guimon and Tom Malinsky, who are members of the committee. And and yourself so far. Chris Cotta, the town administrator, is kind of helping with the meeting. He's there, but not there.
Okay.
To help us shut it down in the end.
If we yell, he'll hear us.
Or if I run into a problem, I'm sort of running, but I haven't run too many of these, so I got to keep paying attention in case somebody else tries to come in to make sure I let them in. So, but so far so good. I think we've got everybody on the board is in. So okay, so we're on chairman's report, and I don't have anything really different to report at this time. There are a couple of things that'll come up under new business or old business, probably better there. So we can move on to item 5, which is brief announcements if anybody has any. Hearing none.
I'd like to
Oh,
I'd
yes.
to add a topic to discuss that Peter Moniz recommended. So afterwards, after you get done with this.
Is it new business?
Regular. Oh, yes.
Okay,
I just want to
we
make,
can bring it up at the end of new business and put it on.
no worries. I just don't want to forget. You can remind me.
I know, Ken, you were here, you want to be here for the aquaculture discussion. That's under old business. If nobody objects, we could move that up so you don't have to stay through other parts that you might not find so interesting. It's all up to you.
Sure, whatever's best for the committee. I don't want to intrude, but
It doesn't matter what order really we do them in. So we're very, how should I say it?
Relax.
We're not as strict as some of the other committees because we don't really have any real power or more advisory that other groups will ask us to comment on this and comment on that. But we do have a very broad charter in a variety of different areas that lets us kind of get involved in things if we want to, but we don't issue permits or things like that like other people do. So we don't have that authority. So unless there's an objection, let's bring up the old business aquaculture and Tiverton update discussion of 1,000-foot exclusion zone from shore for new aquaculture activities. Now, that document, which I passed out or actually emailed to everybody, that I think was written by you, right, Kenny, or
Yes,
somebody, yes.
it was, and I'm happy to share my screen and go through it and walk everyone through it.
Yeah, I did send it to everybody, so everybody should have had it as an email. So if you want to go through it and start discussing it, that would be great.
Sure. Let me see whether I could bring that up here and then share my screen. Just give me two seconds here to figure out how to.
The background to this is that there have been a bunch of meetings, as everybody probably knows, with the Harbor Commission about the numerous requests for new aquaculture set-asides off of Suffolk. And I think there are 2 pending. There's already 1 there. And it's kind of really galvanized some opposition in town as to how many of these things do we have to get in such a small area, in an area that is open to the public, basically free to park in, and all of that. So with that, go ahead, Kenny.
Sure, thanks. And I'll, Chris Cotta was at the meeting last night, and they actually passed a resolution for 1,000-foot notification because that was the big issue
Right.
at the start of all this. But I figured what I'd like to do is just, the purpose of this presentation is to give you a data point with specifically the Suffolk Marsh, but also see how it affects all of the Peconic and Tiverton, and possibly some policy solutions for it to minimize conflict and to try and be heard a little bit more. So in terms of where we are right now, I think everyone may or may not know, but there are 2 potential oyster farms coming in Tiverton, one right outside the Suffolk Marsh and one further north around the corner, just south of Emily Rucker, but up in that area. But if you look at, and I've done the analysis, and that's what this presentation looks at, there could be exponential growth in aquaculture in the Peconic. Right now, the CRMC is looking at where to place these farms in the future. The largest complex, like we are seeing here in the data point in Suffolk, will be where there's shallow waters and recreational users. So that's a real issue, and that's why it could be of interest to the Conservation Commission. We, many in Tiverton, there's a huge movement, we'll look at it in a second, are very much concerned about losing historic use. So this is public access, publicly accessible waters given up for commercial aquaculture. So that's the real tension here, because there is some growth mandate for aquaculture and in Rhode Island. Early back in May, when people first started finding out about this, it was the abutter notification. And Tom, when you started off the meeting describing your committee, saying we're only advisory, we don't do so much. As I've been tracking this, I gotta say, I've seen the shift in Tiverton, because the town council was saying that back in May. They were saying that CRMC has all the power, but I think we have amplified our voice here, and they are already trying to change notification at CRMC. They've come up with new notification as a direct result of the noise we've made in Tiverton. And I think we could continue to amplify our voices, because notification isn't enough. And then I'll go through the end of this just to show you kind of the growth that I calculated based on the South County. My concerns, I got into this specifically. My house is up on the head of the Suffolk Marsh, so I'm an avid fisherman. I fish this area quite a bit. Recreational anglers use it all the time. Striped bass feed at night. So I'm out there at night, and I meet a lot of anglers out there. I've never seen their faces because we're out there in the dark. We barely see each other. But that's when striped bass like to feed, and I'll show you why in a couple of seconds. But when you're out there at night, it can be dangerous. If there are cages out there, something to get hooked on, that's something that you have to be careful of. And a lot of the recreational anglers just weren't aware of this. They just come in and out. There's no way they would know about this. So this is looking at how the movement started this July. This was the first organizing meeting. This is the property that is right next to the oyster farm, basically Gene DeSouza's property. Many of you have seen these signs around town, just talking about Safe Suffolk. That's what started. And then it's gotten a lot of press in both Eco Rhode Island, the Providence Journal, the local paper. So we've tried to elevate our voices and what the issues are. Just from a fisherman's point of view, this is a really well-known area in terms of it's written up in books. You'll see here Fishing New England, that's a well-known guide. They mention the Sepauwett here, and they call out specifically, it's one of the most accessible and productive locations along the eastern shore of the Peconic. Free parking, DEM land here. It's a really great place to fish, and many people use it for fishing and many other things as well. Here's another book, New England Coast. Again, they call out the Sepauwett Marsh, Fogland Beach. The whole corridor is something that is quite accessible for fishermen. So this is why it's a really great fishing spot. The whole marsh empties out here, and why it's a fishing, I call it a fishing hole. I mean, people say, well, you could fish up here, you could fish other areas, but all the fish stack up in here because the marsh flows out at low tide. And this is the direction of the current. This yellow box here is where the oyster farm is proposed for. And it's not surprising that they want to put it there because the nutrients come out of the marsh and they want to take advantage of that, as do the fish that we fish for that are coming out there. This is where that organizing meeting was. This is Gene DeSouza's property, sliver of land here that the aquaculture farmers bought. And then this is Ricky Metcalf's area right here. These two properties have been in their families for generations, and they've been around for a while. This shows, you guys know this, how well used it is. Busy parking lot, Boy Scout fishing derby in August. And then you'll see at different tides here, you could wade across the mouth there.
Yes.
But people really use this and like this. So, and then the other thing is, in terms of access and diversity and free parking, many demographic mixes use this water all the time. It's terrific. It's what's great about Rhode Island. Public access, you could get down there. All walks of life fish in that area. I fly fish, others spin fish, but we all coexist down there. So now this is the overhead. So you'll see the marsh coming out here. And then these are the buoys marking the area right now. And is my screen, you could see this fully, right?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
You have some people on the phone though, so I don't know if they can see it. So keep describing it as you go.
okay. And so we're on the slide that's an overhead of looking at the marsh coming out, and their blue lines, these 4 blue lines outline the trapezoid shape of the marsh. And you'll see at low tide, if you came here at high tide, you wouldn't see this obviously. But at low tide, when anglers use it and it's very accessible, you could wade right out here. Absolutely. And you could see right. The waders coming in and people who are kayaking there. So very, very used spot. And then in terms of the depth, you'll see here a corner, the upper left-hand corner slot here shows an arrow pointing to one of the corner buoys. Someone anchored a kayak next to it, and then you'll see a kayak paddle, how shallow it is at low tide. So very accessible. If the cages were in there, I think they would be showing at low tide, not at Absolutely. High tide, but definitely at low tide. What the next slide looks at is if you are spin fishing, and the blue line looks at a 250-foot range for a spin fishing rod. And the blue lines show where I and other anglers wade out and cast from into the mouth coming out. And then you'll also see that they will cast right into the oyster farm where the oyster farm would be. And this is where all the fish stack up. This is why it's such a great fishing spot. The red lines just show a drop-off point. You wouldn't go much further than that, but there's a good drop-off point and the fish stack up in there as well. So you can see that if you're spin fishing, I fly fish, I could probably cast a quarter of this distance with a fly rod, but with a spin fishing rod, which I use also, you could cast pretty far, and people work this whole area, especially at low tide. So the idea that we had, or I had, and I've been doing a lot of research on this, is Suffolk County in Long Island. There are 2 forks to Long Island that form the Peconic Bay. And there's something called the Suffolk County Aquaculture Lease Program in the Peconic Bay. And the Peconic Bay is very similar in demographics and physically to Narragansett Bay. And I talked to the Peconic Baykeeper, a nonprofit up there. I looked at their regulations, and they have 1,000-foot buffer from shoreline for any aquaculture. Then they worked with stakeholder groups to determine what the best places are to place aquaculture. So they created aquaculture zones. And the idea here was to minimize conflict. And then they also created a cap on the acreage, total acreage. And they said no more than 600 acres. We're going to see how this goes for 10 years, and no more than 60 acres per year. So it's very competitive. And many of the folks in aquaculture there look to Rhode Island and they say, wow, it's much easier to get a lease here. And obviously we're seeing that, because I feel this shouldn't have gotten this far given the heavy use of this area. So these blue lines in this slide here look at 1,000-foot buffer. So I tried to think, okay, well, let's take whatever is a precedent in Peconic Bay and what would happen if we did it here. And so if you said nothing inside 1,000 feet, you would not have any conflict with the recreational anglers. It would push the farm outside this area, and you'd have free use of the area, and this would really open up. And then these little dots here are moorings. So I'll go to the next slide and show you what it looks like for the moorings when you go south from Suffolk down to Fogland. And there are many moorings there. But if you look at this 1,000-foot buffer zone here, these mooring fields would be protected, and you wouldn't have this conflicting use. So the idea of the 1,000-foot buffer zone is to say, listen, let's find a logical place for these. If we create a buffer zone, we'll minimize the conflicting use, and you could have your farms out there. And many people that I talk to who are in this fight and who live down in this community feel like 1,000 feet is reasonable in terms of having that kind of buffer zone. So that was kind of using the data point of Suffolk and then what 1,000 feet could look like here. I could continue to walk through, so I could pause for questions now, but I could continue to run through how this might project out for the rest of this economy, but maybe I'll pause for any questions right now.
Okay, are there any questions?
Well, Tom, it's Richie.
Okay.
You know, I've worked at Peconic River now all my life, one time or another. And my confidence in the state doing things right is pretty much nil, as you probably know. They've never really done the things they needed to do. The Peconic River is pretty much a dead river now because dredging was stopped years ago for mostly political reasons. I think some of what Ken was saying is probably doable. I think there's a lot of issues. I mean, I've seen it over in Spec Pond. We've got, I think there's 3 grants over there now, and they're just eating up the bottom over there for the hand rakers. Right. And I think you and I discussed there's another application over there in that east-northeast corner of.
It's already there. It's already constructed. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's my point. Well, no, that's not in that northeast corner. I thought there was another one that they were trying.
That's the one right near the exit, right before you that last exit, right?
Yeah, but you can go east of that one, and there's still a lot of, well, there's not a lot, but there is still the ground there, and it's all show. Right. But they clearly want show water because it makes it easy for them.
Right.
But you know, one of the other things, the other problem with this is the state. There's no enforcement. They never check on the grants that are over there in Spec Pond. I mean, I swear up and down that there's a gradual stretching of their leases. I've never yet seen a boat, or a DEM boat, checking out to see if their boundaries are kept in line. I mean, there's a lot of questions here. I understand exactly I mean, as far as I'm concerned right now, I think the point being is there's plenty of ground in the deeper water, but that also creates other issues. But I won't get into that. I think from a political point of view, if any of this stuff goes through that's being proposed that the town council voted on to go to the state with, they better make sure that they keep on it, because the state has a habit of just not doing what they're supposed to be doing, even though they say they are or they will. I mean, history proves it. That's all I can say. So Ken and his group, look, I live on Neck Road.
Ah.
I've been here for 50 years, and all I can tell you is I've seen a lot. I've done it all, and usually, generally speaking, the state isn't your best steward.
Well, the CRMC, the regulatory agency, they're looking at being reorganized because they don't have a budget.
Yeah, well, they need to be.
Yeah. And so, but then, we don't know where it's going to land, but point well taken. They will claim that the notification process is good, that they do look at these leases, but the reality is we all know that it's probably not as good as they could be. But I think they are listening to Tiverton, and we're trying to come up with solutions here that might work. But yes, we will keep at it, because I think there's an inflection point here with the Save Suffolk movement. There's also a statewide group that's very interested in this, that's trying to track this as well. So there's a lot of interest in this. And, as we go through the rest of this, you'll see there's more coming without a doubt. And
Oh, yeah.
There's precedent for it.
I really like the 1,000-foot idea myself, because you're right. I think it would minimize the bad interactions that would occur. And they can put these things anywhere. It's just more expensive to have them into the deeper area.
Yeah, and the other problem, Tom, if I may, is that, and this is what you're going to definitely hear, I know, because I've heard it, is that these floating docks, floating systems that we're proposing, or the group's proposing, create also navigational issues at night. They probably should be lit, but they won't be. There's, and then there's the who's responsible. Is it the state, or is it the grant leasee, the whatever? But there are, there's issues. There's always issues, as we well know. But you're going to hear some of that too. So you better be prepared to be having an answer for it. But when you get all these boaters running around, especially like in the Fogland area, it's a big anchorage. I'm surprised they haven't tried to put a grant in on the north side of where we planted those bushes, Tom.
Right.
Up in that where the surface, not the surface, the
windsurf.
fly is.
Yeah.
The windsurf. Thank you.
There have been requests there, I think, in the past. There have been requests there. There have been requests in Nanaquacket Pond too, several times.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
And in that north part of Fogland, it's all shoal water. You can walk quite a distance out before it drops off there.
It would have the exact same issue as this. The recreational people would object again, because that's a world famous or country famous windsurfing area.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I don't think they'll ever get it. It's not the best place in the winter because it's open to the northwest winds, but it is protected from the southerly southwest, west southwest. And again, as much as you say, well, it'd be great to move them out into deeper water, it does create other issues.
Absolutely.
But you gotta go with what's thrown at you, and I think you got to be prepared to have an answer for it. And again, regulations and information to the motoring public on where these places are, or how are they going to be marked, that kind of stuff. I mean, you might even have Coast Guard be getting involved in this. This is a long-standing argument, situation that's been around for some time, but it's definitely going to get where you got to stay on top of it.
What should I continue on here? Because I think
Were there any more questions, or should we continue on?
I'm
Why don't
just
you go ahead?
curious about,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
well, let me ask you a question. I'm curious, this is Tom. I'm curious about grants. Is this free money that these businesses are getting to establish these? Or is it private enterprises that strictly supply their own money to create these farms?
These are all private enterprises. I mean, they're applying at the Coastal Resources Management Council. They pay a fee. It's all a commercial operation.
Okay.
The fee's pretty
Yeah,
trivial. It's like a couple $100.
Yeah, the fee is nothing compared to what they get out of it,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Out of it, yeah.
Okay. All right, why don't you proceed?
Okay, I'll go through this really quickly, but I mean, you see the size of the industry here compared to other, fishing, recreation, other things. There is an emphasis to try and grow aquaculture, maybe to get as big as some of the others, but this just shows you that there are other users of the water. I mean, that's really some of the industry statistics. Now, looking at the oyster farms, what I did, there's a slide in here that looks at the oyster farms on South County. And most of those are in the salt ponds there. All of them are in the salt ponds. So the whole industry kind of started down there, but they've reached maximum capacity. So what I did was took a look, I did an analysis of the 16 miles of oyster farms. They're all the things in red. Those are the oyster farms. And I took it from the CRMC database, but there are about 228 acres of oyster farms, total of 49 farms. So that gives you about 4.7 acres per farm. So just keep that number in your head. So, but maximum capacity there. So there's very little growth potential in South County unless they change regulations, because there's a 5% cap rule in the ponds down there. However, if you look at Narragansett Bay, on the West Passage, on the west side of the bay, there's more in there. Jamestown is fairly populated. Kingstown, North Kingstown, it's creeping up on the other side of Aquidneck, but you'll see not much on the Peconic. And so I tried to drill down here and look at very specifically where the leases are right now, and you'll see very few in the Peconic. But what the size is of the Narragansett Bay, because some people might say, well, South County is very different than Narragansett Bay. Well, let's just do the numbers quickly, how they're grouped, how they're located in the West Passage. And the same thing could happen, the same configuration, 4.7 acres per farm or so could happen on the Peconic. So if you fast forward and look at what that is, I mean, this is the Peconic. You'll see the three sections. Each of these orange rectangles in the slide represent about 4.7 acres. So this is how you get to that total acreage, total capacity between the Peconic and Little Compton, just on the east side of the bay on our shoreline. So this is.
And you're not even assuming any in Nanaquacket yet.
Not yet.
Right.
This was brute force, just putting in blocks of 4.7 and see where they could go. And we'll be looking at this over time. Now, South County grew over a number of years, but for the Conservation Commission and for those of us who value a coastline and what it looks like, this could be coming if we don't get ahead of it. And that's kind of the point here. And then what I did was, okay, let's just take the configurations from the other areas and just pop them in here. And you can see there's your Nanaquacket configuration.
Right.
And these are farms, I just cut and pasted the ones from the other side of the bay to what it could look like when you come into the Peconic. They could be configured in that way too. So finding the location for these, I think, is the key. That's really going to be the community getting involved in this. But this really is where there's not a lot of aquaculture yet. But if you take what's going on in the West Passage and apply it here, this is what it could look like. So in general, just a summary and conclusions, I've talked through this. It's going to be continued growth, but there's a real opportunity now for Tiverton to take a leadership role. And I think, Tom, you mentioned you guys are advisory only, but you are the Conservation Commission. This regulation was passed last night, and it's clear that the Tiverton Town Council is listening to the community because they sent in 2 letters. And I think this is clearly within interest maybe for the Conservation Commission. And the 1,000-foot buffer zone would be a great solution for some balance here. There's support from state legislators. We know that because 3 of them attended a meeting in July when this was all blowing up. And they said, well, listen, we can't do anything right now because the state's not in session right now. It's not going to be in session until January. Where we're in January right now, the town council passed that resolution last night that they're going to send up to the state. Jay Edwards had already thought about that this summer, and then he had it refined, and they passed it. And if you watch last night's meeting, complete change of focus. You know, they were all very proud that to have a unified voice on this, and that we were representing and galvanizing the community around this. So I think there could be an opportunity here, although this is a little bit more aggressive in kind of the back end of things. But you do have support from the Save Suffolk community and other stakeholder groups, both fishing and hunting groups and others around. So, you know, my recommendation policy-wise is this 1,000-foot coastline buffer zone. If some group could get behind this, I think it would be great. That Special House Commission is still looking at the CRMC. There's continued reorganization. And if anything, if this doesn't pass, what it does is, and like what the legislation, the resolution from Tiverton last night, it shows that the town means business. And as the House Special Commission looks at any reforms, they'll say, oh, well, there's this piece of proposed legislation floating around that's been sent to all the coastal communities, and Tiverton, who's a main town on the Peconic, maybe we ought to incorporate this into our reform recommendations. So getting that out there, I think would be, you know, a great shot across the bow for reform and for a possible solution here. And then the last thing is just determining the maximum aquaculture carrying capacity in Narragansett Bay, but that's using the social carrying capacity. So that's with stakeholder input, because you could put a lot of oysters in Narragansett Bay, but there are other uses as well. And the CRMC is running that process right now. It still seems a little bit favored towards aquaculture and industry, but really that's kind of what's going on. And then, you know, just the public trust. This is what it's all about. I think this is why many of us love Tiverton, because it's so accessible, and we have access to the shore here, and it's clearly in Rhode Island's Constitution, and it's right. It's our right. And it feels like in this case, we've got our rights have been kind of pushed aside in favor of commercial interests. Now, you know, now that the CRMC is listening to us, maybe that'll change. There was a case study in Potter Pond that you guys might have followed,
Right.
and the CRMC subcommittee recommended against it. But we're not there yet. We're still very early on. But my point is, this should have never gotten this far. So if you have 1,000-foot buffer zone, you have 1,000-foot notification, you get involved earlier in the process, minimize the conflict, and know where people could go. So I think that this might be a solution. And that's why, Tom, I sent it to you, and we were talking through it. I know the Harbor Commission is working on a harbor management plan, which is something different than this. But I just thought maybe this might be of interest to the Conservation Commission.
Okay. And the 1,000-foot distance, do we run into that issue that even what you have from the Constitution, where they run into that mean high tide mark or wherever it starts from? Do we have that issue that'll come up?
I don't think so. I think there's enough flexibility. You know, they talk about, I think that issue is like where is that lateral line?
Where is that line? Right. Yeah.
But I feel like 1,000 feet, there's a little bit of room for rounding.
If we were off by 50 feet, we still have a lot of protection.
Yes.
Okay, makes sense. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Tom,
Yes.
I just got a comment here. He mentioned that there was some state officials that were supporting this. Are they're on this side of the bay? I mean, this Tiverton, Little Compton area. Is that what we're saying?
I think so. Representative Edwards is very much interested in this. I think I had a conversation with Jim Seveny this summer and Lou DePalma this summer at a couple of events, and let them know those are the guys. I don't know whether redistricting, whether that'll change, but they're very interested in this. And Seveny fished down there. He knows the area. Edwards knows the area really well. He said he's a duck hunter. So,
however, Ken, this has to go before the legislature, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you already presented the argument about all these grants over in the ponds over there, and now you're talking the West Bay. the West Channel there, around Fox Island, that whole Dutch Island area. All of those politicians on that side of the bay, in the past, just so you know, has always controlled whatever we tried to do over here in Tiverton. When we were back in the dredging days, when we were doing transplants, dredging the Peconic River, 35, 40 boats, putting a lot of people to work, we always had to put up with the politicians from the West Shore because they were always protecting their interests over there. And at the time, there was a lot more hand rakers than there are now. So all I'm saying is we can have all the best irons in the fire on this side, but if it gets up into the State House, you're going to be sure that all those interests on the West Shore of the ponds, the West Passage, all of those areas, they're going to fight tooth and nail to keep what they think is best for them. So all I'm saying is you got to be prepared to for a fight. I don't believe this will be just a carte blanche, you know what I'm saying, from our perspective, that's all. It's never happened in the past.
But there have been fights now, the Potter's Pond thing, where they just won. So that,
You're talking
changing on
Potter's, are you talking Potter's Cove, Tom?
the salt, it was the salt pond. They argued for recreational use and they won, I think, right? That was my recollection.
Yeah, they haven't voted on it yet, but there's a subcommittee that said that it wasn't a good idea, and they
right. So times,
well,
I think there's so many of them now that people are starting to say, when is enough enough? And especially if they start showing up in public areas.
I couldn't agree with you more.
And the other thing that bothers me, that I brought up too, is that it bothers me that, you know, these aren't even in the historical oyster areas. Oysters need hard bottom, like rock. They cement themselves to stuff and make wreaths. This is in what's basically clam
Yeah,
territory.
but that's not working. I mean, with the cages, Tom, and the strings, they're not concerned about the bottom. What they're concerned about is easy access.
Right,
so
right,
everything what Ken was describing at Suffolk, I'm very familiar with that whole area, and they're just picking grounds that they can make it easy for them.
But the guy from the CRMC was telling me that, well, if you look at the map based in 1900, there were all these places that were growing oysters and leases and things. But if you look at that map, it's almost all in the north part of Narragansett Bay. Not down where we were, there were almost none because this was muddy and sandy.
Yeah, that's way before.
Clams.
Yeah, you're going so far back, Tom, that pollution wasn't as big an issue. I mean, the pollution may have been there, but the fact of the matter is, the Providence River was, I would suspect, was open. The Warren River was open. All of those places, 100 Acre Cove, all of those places were open, and so they had plenty of ground to do the big leases. I mean, and plus you had the natural crop of oysters as well, because that in itself was an industry. And so,
well, I guess what I'm saying is that they're expanding into areas that even traditionally weren't used for this, and they're basically exchanging one group of species for another, which I don't really like either. I think that some of these other arguments can be brought up against it, not just recreation, not just that. It's just getting so big that it's having this effect everywhere.
Yeah, and I think the strongest, the industry talks a lot. I mean, they've got a strong trade association that goes out and talks about how oysters clean the water. But I think the real issue here is the public trust and our right to the water and where these things are sited. And that is really critical for us and for Tiverton and the future of aquaculture in general, whether it's fish farms or whatever else. I mean, you know, there's a trade-off between public access to waters that everyone use, and then where's the right place to put these. I mean, if you went up to the town rec area and you have all those ball fields there, for example, and let's say someone said, well, I want to put in an organic farm on one of the ball fields there. You know, which ball field are you willing to give up? Well, I don't think I want to give up that ball field because my kids play there. The community uses it. I know you're trying to feed people, but that's recreational use. And that's not entirely different from what's going on here, that people use this, it's recreational water. And that's the real issue. I mean, however many oysters were grown here in the 1900s, they had the same issue in Peconic Bay. But what they've done up there with the Suffolk County Lease Program is they've tried to establish areas that are appropriate for aquaculture. They created the 1,000-foot buffer zone, and that could be a solution for us. Here, I don't know that industry is going to like it because they want fewer regulations.
Oh, they won't like it. I can tell you that right now.
And they
won't
want
like it.
quicker access. But Rhode Island is known for its coastline and its waters, and its citizens value that, and it's a public right. So,
Ken, it's all valid arguments. Believe me, I hear what you're saying. All I'm saying to you is, and your group, that be prepared politically to put on a real fight, and you're going to probably need more help than just the politicians in this area. And that's all I can say.
yeah,
It's history.
you're right.
But the
But if we
public
don't fight,
is
we lose it for
constantly
sure.
losing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the squeaky wheel, the grease gets the squeaky wheel, and all of the above. And it also comes down to money too. You may be having to hire lawyers and bringing them to court. I mean, these are all the things, and they're all valid arguments. Believe me.
And the good news is, I think, too, is that, like we were told, CRMC is under the microscope for a number of things, not just this.
Oh yeah.
They
And
may
that's
not
to
want
your-
to be, in
and that's
trouble
to
for
the
this
advantage of
and
what-
everything else.
Correct.
So I think it's valid, and to move it along, I think what we'd really like to do maybe is give our approval also to the I guess what we're calling this is a resolution, right, for the council. I mean, it's already been approved, but we could also just say that we looked at it and we approved it as well.
Yeah, Tom, it's a little bit different. So what was approved last night was a 1,000-foot notification. And I think what I'm trying to recommend here to see if this group would want to recommend it to the town
complete buffer
council
zone, yeah, right.
is
Okay.
to do a
Yep.
1,000-foot buffer zone. I scratched something out before I saw the resolution. But I think this commission could possibly, talk to the town council or Marcella or something.
Sure.
I think there's some momentum now, given the 1,000-foot notification. And I think it was clear last night, they said, well, listen, this is only about notification.
Yes.
But the
Yeah.
real issue is this back end here where you're going to have even more conflicts. So you might notify people early, but if they're still dropping it in their mooring field, or they're still dropping it at the mouth of the Sepauwett Marsh, you're going to have conflict, and it's going to be a nightmare for the town council and for the residents of Tiverton. So it's good to get ahead of it.
It may very well be that the best position is to say enough's enough. We have enough now. But that's just me.
So having seen the version that he sent out, which I forwarded to everybody, which talks about the buffer zone, not just the notification. How would we feel about endorsing this? And I can send it with a cover letter to the town council saying that, we've looked at this, we've discussed it, and we believe that, basically enough is enough, and we need to do something to protect these areas that have a multitude of other uses, not just this one private use that seems to be proliferating at a good clip.
Well, I think the
Yeah,
public has lost enough oceanfront and riverfront that how much more are we going to lose? We're eventually
I'll
going
make
to
a
have
motion,
nothing at
Tom.
all.
Okay, you want to make a motion that we approve this and I'll send it on to the council?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, so made by Rich and seconded by Liz?
Yep.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed? No, okay, unanimous, 4-0. Okay, I will write it up and I'll get it to them as soon as I can, and we'll fire the first shot. This is like the burning of the Gatsby, right? Somebody has to start it and
Yeah.
see where it goes.
It's important, and thank you for doing it.
I do agree, because we've got to
Yeah,
preserve
we all
these
agree.
areas.
Yeah.
And sooner or later too, we're probably gonna have to address where is this mean high tide business too, because that's always been something that they try to get us on as well. And
The-
When this, when this
one
first
thing at a
came
time
across, we
for
were
now.
against it.
right. So
The one question I did have, and it slipped my mind because we were talking, was, has this group or has any of the regulations been put forward besides the buffer and the 1,000 feet? about who's responsible if there's a major hurricane and all this stuff is washed ashore, or it's disappears, or I mean, who's responsible for that? Is anybody?
Clean up.
And about the enforcement of boundaries, who is that ever been mentioned?
Yeah, in theory, it's the leaseholder with enforcement by the CRMC.
They have
Okay.
one guy who's dedicated to aquaculture that supposedly goes around in a boat.
Yeah.
I've never seen them. Anyways,
A lot of
I just
territory to
question
check
it.
up on.
whether or not it was part of a lease person who is the leasee, I guess is the term, does he have a set of regulations in front of him when he gives them the fee for a piece of ground, and then the state says, this is what you're responsible for? Do we know if that's even part of it?
Yes, it's part of the regulations. He's also the lessee is also required to leave a bond, a deposit, which
Okay.
is that can be seized if they don't comply, and they could use it.
And what's the bond based on the size of the lease?
I think so. I don't know what the dollar amount is.
The leases
I
run
mean,
a couple $100 according to Ben. Ben told me that.
I mean,
Not much.
if it's only a bond of a few $100 or $1,000, I mean, that's a drop in the bucket
Right. Yeah.
in the big picture.
It's per year, but I mean, it could add up if they get it for quite a period of time. I think like 15 years or something, if they don't mess up.
That's
Right.
right.
And that was the other question that I don't know if has been answered, though. Like over in South Pond, if some of these companies go belly up, then obviously someone else can step into their grounds if they apply just like the original. Is that correct?
That's right, and the leases are transferable too. So I think they could transfer their right to.
Yeah, and that's a very dangerous thing, transferable leases. Because what could happen is it's happened right now with the red crab industry, which I was in at one time. Now the red crab industry on the continental shelf is owned by one fishing company out of Maine for the whole continental shelf to catch red crab. And they used to, how he achieved that was keep buying up the licenses.
Yep.
Well, it sounds like the
So, I
best
mean,
approach here is to just try to keep it at a minimum in our area. It's already
Yep.
got large areas elsewhere. And if they can't do it, then all these other questions become moot, right?
That's correct.
They
But
never
those
build it and we're safe.
But it's the same old story, Tom. You don't want those questions to have to be answered after the
I hear
problem is there.
I hear you. Right. We've been burned before by things like that. Right. But I think it's a good start. We need to start going on offense and not just playing reactionary defense, because sooner or later
Absolutely.
it's find a way through and then all of a sudden it's there. And it is a problem too that CRMC has the dual responsibility to promote this, but also regulate it. And I don't think you can do both equally well. I think you end up favoring one or the other. And it's pretty clear looking around which way they favor.
Yeah.
And construction of more and more. So, okay.
All right. Well, I really appreciate the time. I don't want to take up your meeting, but thank you for taking the time. And I look forward to working with you guys. And thank you for all you do for Tiverton. I mean, it's really important. I love.
Thanks. That was a great presentation too. Thanks for all the
Thank
research there. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers. Have a good evening.
Okay,
You
thank
can
you.
send that to me and I can send it to the others if somebody else wants to have a copy of it.
Did I send it to you or?
I don't know if you did or not. If not, you can read if you
I'll
did.
resend it. I'll resend it to you.
Okay. Yeah. Great.
Great. Thanks.
Right,
Night.
thank
Alrighty.
you.
Have a good night.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. That brings us, we'll go back to new business then. So the first item there is status of solar power ordinance and regulations. I did attend one of the town council's meetings on that, and it went on and back and forth and a lot of discussion. But the gist of it that I felt was they want to go small. They don't want these massive clear cuts that would be paved over basically by the solar panels. That one that you drive by on Main Road near Melville, near the school.
Yeah, that huge
Yeah.
thing.
That's only, I think, 5 acres or so. I mean, we had one that was going to be 60, remember? So, or even
Yeah.
more. So that's a relatively small one. But It sounded like, and I talked to Trish. Trish was there. There were other people there, and I think there is a committee they're putting together. I don't think it's completely filled out with people yet. Maybe it is. So if someone really is interested in this, there's a chance to get on it. I don't have the time, but they were thinking of trying to, and I absolutely agree with this, try to force these things smaller, like onto the roof of the schools, onto the land, into these areas where it
Yeah.
wouldn't cause damage to the environment, and maybe onto houses as people want it too, because a lot of these buildings are already wired to the grid, so you don't have to invest in that. But
Mhm.
you would have all these little things there that would be contributing without increasing the runoff footprint, without increasing the destruction of the trees and the bushes and the habitats and all of that. So that's where I think the town people want to take it. And it sounded like, again, the council was not opposed to that. So
Yeah.
I don't believe they get a lot of taxes off these farms either, because there are special rules and regs that the legislature put in to encourage it that kind of interfere with, zapping it with a real, what it's probably really valued at, because they want to encourage it to be built. But I just don't see it being worthwhile when they just pave over so much stuff. And there's so many other blighted areas or already built areas where they could build it that wouldn't have anything like that effect. So I'm hoping that's where it's going, but we'll have to wait and see.
Did Trish get on the committee, Tom?
I don't know. I think they're still putting people on it. It's not completely filled up yet.
Yeah,
We'll have
I
to
thought
check the town website and see if they've finalized who's on it.
yeah, I thought maybe she was going to get on that committee because
She was at the meeting and had an interest, in all that. Not Liz, Durfee spoke, and other people, so all famous people from the town were up talking about the need to kind of cut back on this and just not let. Our problem is that of all the East Bay, we have the most land, the cheapest large areas of land. Quinnic Island's too expensive to build large ones, and there's no room. Little Compton is too expensive. We're like the target because our land is still relatively cheap, and there's still relatively big parcels you could buy, and that's bad for our town. So,
well, just like the water, Tom.
yeah, we're getting hemmed in land and water.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yep.
Okay, the second item that I wanted to bring up, again, this is more for Tom, but I've been thinking about this, and I do agree that this is something that we can do to really benefit the town, and we need to maybe start taking more of a role in it. But we have to get some things probably through the town council to get the authority to really kind of start comparing the lists. We've got the one from the state, we've got the one from the town. They don't quite agree, and we know they're out of date. And so we need a way to contact all the people who we think or we know might have had these tanks and get the information back about whether they've actually been retired properly. Are they still there? And that would require some backing from the council, which I think we can get, because these things are ticking time bombs. The other thing I'd like to see too from the council would be some sort of an ordinance that would prohibit any of these oil companies from selling and giving, putting oil down into any underground tank that hasn't been certified that it's been checked and it's not leaking and it's safe. Because again, we really don't know what's going on, and that would be a way that we could, at least in the interim, be kind of safe from having a disaster. And if somebody still wants to use their tank, they can get it inspected, submit the report, and if it's fine, then that's okay. But if they don't want to do that, then we shouldn't be allowing that reservoir to hold oil to potentially pollute the ground.
These tanks, Tom, should just like septic systems now. They're obsolete. These tanks are obsolete. They're too much of a danger into the environment, and they should put a moratorium, like 6 months from now or a year from now. No more no underground tanks. Period.
The only problem I feel, unfortunately, as much as I want all of them out, is the state definition of anything less than, I believe it's, I'm doing memory again because it's been so long since I've been looking at the slides, but anything less than 1,200 gallons for home heating use, the state endorses it and does not care about inspection, even though it can be detrimental to the environment. The state has made that, DEM has made that directive. And
well,
so you really,
you know what, Tom? It's another example of the state. That's all I can say.
I know.
But
and
it
it's
doesn't mean that
painful.
the town can't do it though, right? It just means the state doesn't care. But if the town cares, we could pass an ordinance. We're not saying you can't have it. We're saying that if you've got it, you need to have the inspection like you do for septic to verify that you're not causing a problem. And then we can always work on getting rid of them, but I think that's at least a first attempt.
All right, but Tom, what's the difference? What's the difference between somebody who's just bought a house and it's got an old cesspool, and they say, okay, you got a year now to fix it, or you got to do it before we sell it or buy it, or blah blah blah. That's the way it is now.
Right.
Why can't it be that way with tanks?
Well, I think
I'm
if we
almost
could
sure-
get an ordinance passed to prohibit the delivery of oil to these tanks unless they do the inspection and prove that it's in good shape. I think getting rid of them is harder than doing the regulating of them, but it would go in that order. We'll regulate first and then try to get rid of them. But my real concern is we don't want anybody currently using a tank that's a problem. And the only way we're going to find out, we don't even know if you know, who still has a tank and still using it. Some of these might have been filled in or
I would have to wonder how many oil companies are even willing now to put oil into the ground with all of the problems that would be coming out of.
Yes,
I
I've
know
got
of one.
tags on my fill pipes.
Say again?
I've got tags on my fill pipes. They don't deliver unless they know where it's going.
I would imagine very few if there's an ordinance against, you know, they're going to be in trouble violating
Because the
ordinance.
oil company is liable.
The oil company, for instance, a friend of mine in Middletown, they would not fill their tank. They thought it was going into an underground tank. And he says, no, you have to come look in a house. And it was going into in a basement tank because it just went under the cement. They would not deliver. They gave them a letter saying, we will not deliver. I think it may have been Wildcat or one of the Tiverton oil companies.
Yeah, I have Wildcat.
But I guess the
They
issue is
yeah.
we need to make sure that they all are that way, that nobody is, I don't care, I'm delivering oil. And that
But
would
there are cases of people like Woods Oil comes out of western part of Rhode Island. Farrier Fuel Oil comes out of Somerset. They deliver to Tiverton. And so you're wondering what their process is, you know, what their policy is. I just know that there's this one example, and I would have to find out from my friend just again, because it's been a while since I spoke to him. It may have been Wildcat that says we won't do it. And there may be, but there are other unscrupulous oil companies out in the town who they'll put it into anything.
Well, if we could get it passed saying that you cannot deliver to an underground tank without the town having the proof that it's been inspected and it's okay, then that should stop it. And we can send out the letters to all these companies and they're on notice. And if they do that, then they're going to get, you know, there'll be a sufficient fine in there to make it not worth their while.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think we need to start somewhere, because if we don't, there could be people still doing this. So we can, Tom, you and I can talk offline about some things we can do to start this. I just wanted to bring it up again so we don't forget. I think this is something really important. It's in our mandate to try to protect groundwater because a good portion of the town still depends on that. And even if they don't, we don't want to pollute things and then have issues. So this is something that we can really do to help. Nobody else is going to do it.
No.
No, that's for sure.
Well, if you've been looking at Tiverton happenings these past couple of weeks, they've been having urine-colored water in their faucets. And we've got enough problems with water, never mind, you know, underground storage tanks.
Where is this?
North Tiverton.
Where?
North Tiverton.
Oh, North Tiverton.
Yeah, they're having an awful time with their water. And North Tiverton is telling them, oh, it's fine, drink it.
Really?
Yeah. So
And
I
they just
told-
had a real big tax increase too. They actually raised
Yes.
rate even though we had a reval.
And they said, well, if I'm going to pay that much money, I want water that's clean.
Right.
And they said, oh, no, it's fine. It's just discolored. And I
Yeah,
said,
sure.
and I posted the URI numbers for the water testing for them. And somebody said, oh, you can get free testing at Home Depot. And I said, no. I said, they're trying to sell you a water filtration system.
Yeah, they're not going to do anything.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
said,
the
they're
only-
not
there's
doing
other
something
thing-
for free for you.
No, that's the only reason why they come in your door. And they're going to do a superficial test for hardness
Yeah.
and acidity, perhaps. Now, there's other thing like the club. Since we have a public well in the Tiverton Run Gun Club, we have
Yeah.
Bell Labs that come out every 3 months. That you could get a complete suite of tests, which would be able to, if like a bunch of citizens in North Tiverton want to just get together and contribute towards having a complete set that could tell you what's inside that water.
Yeah.
And that would help. And the other thing too is I sent you guys, I mean, maybe it's been 6 months ago, maybe, of take a look at the water at some of these cities, including Tiverton or Somerset or Fall River, all of the chemicals, industrial chemicals that are present from the environmental working group showing the levels.
Right.
It's there, unfortunately, and no one's thinking about a town, you're right, and no one seems to care until there's something like Flint, Michigan, and then all of a sudden people are afraid because they're going to go to jail or maybe be prosecuted. But
Yeah.
I'll go online and get the latest version. I gave you, you spoke with me, Pat, in the past, I sent you and I said, I have to do some sorting to get the Tiverton up front. And there is definitely discrepancies because the original tank, when my friend and I went against the town council and got them to have them volunteer people to come in to list their tanks, can guarantee a lot of people never did it because they were not going to pay attention to some volunteer action.
Yeah.
But who
Right,
did
but
it?
that's where the oil companies could come in to help us though, too, that we could put in the ordinance that they need to let us know where are they delivering to tanks that are in the ground. And there could be a penalty for them lying about that, but that could help us update the list as well and catch some of the people that never got on the list for whatever reason. So there are ways
I agree.
we're never going to get 100%, but we need something better than what we've got, I think.
So I agree.
So
I agree. And
but we'll
either
talk
way.
offline about it so we don't tie up all tonight, but I just wanted to bring it up again and
Sure.
just get the blessing of the commission to move forward with something so we can start doing this.
I'll resurrect and go to the state and get the latest list. And I did send you the old list, but that is so old. That's the early, I'm
Right.
trying to remember because I had the article that when Dick Miles, my coworker, and I went in front of the council. And I had to deal with people like Buddy Lane was there who owned an oil company. And then DeMello, who was calling me an idiot, and Bobby DeMello. So it was a tough situation dealing with some of the people in our town. Hopefully but even when I present
They don't bother me.
with
They're going to
the
do
town,
the job
no,
right. They're not going to screw up our town.
no, it didn't bother me in the least.
Yeah.
But when I presented, what was his name? Jan was there, in front of it, and he was willing to go off with it. Then I guess apparently he was going to really talk to the state and that, but I believe he probably has some medical issues. That's why he quit.
Yeah.
That kind of dropped everything.
I agree with Rich. The
It's too bad.
state, we can't depend on the state. I think we have to do it from the bottom up and present everybody with the updated list one way or another. But we need some authority backing from the council so that we can send out letters to people saying, you were on this list back then of having an in-ground tank, and the oil company says they still deliver to you. You need an inspection, and you need to all that stuff. We need to get that. We need to figure out what we need and then work that through the council this year at some point.
Yeah. The other thing too is I did remember talking to the Lease engineer and the DEM about the 1,200 gallon. He says, who would ever put that in? That makes no sense. that would pollute tremendous amount of people if it leaks. And he just kind of brushed it off like, oh, that's okay, it's good enough. And I was shocked that the state would allow a 1,200 gallon because it's home heating oil, because they didn't want to bother people that have it. Without regards to the fact that they'll eventually leak. And I don't understand where the state comes from with this. And this is a guy that should be endorsing the fact that they should get rid of them all.
You can't
You know?
understand politics. Politics isn't rational.
And
That's
because Tiverton is mainly wells. I mean,
south
agree.
of Boulder
I agree.
Marsh, yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
That's the boundary.
Yeah.
And
So,
with all the
okay.
ledge in that, you'd never be able to get, as I said before, never get water down to South Tiverton
never.
without
Right.
millions and millions of dollars that you'd never be able to achieve. So it
Yeah,
just makes no sense.
That's never going to happen, Tom.
No.
Unless somebody pollutes
yeah.
all the ground there.
Yeah.
I'll resurrect all this stuff, get some latest data from the state, and then we can do some sorting with Excel and
By the way-
South Tiverton will become summer houses, and we'll run hoses down to you.
When I complained to North Tiverton about the tax increase, and they were telling me why they did it and all that, because there was a water main break on Dewey Ave that wasn't planned or anything. So they had already committed money to redo the piping down where the sewers are going, because they can split the cost of fixing the road between the sewer and them instead of all on them. And so they needed the extra money out of the thing. But anyway, what they told me was prices are really up on all of this stuff. And it's like now $1 million per mile to redo the pipes.
yeah, I
So
could
it's
imagine.
really expensive. And that's another reason why South Tiverton might never get water. Unless there's an
Yeah.
absolute emergency and it's
No.
forced to.
Yeah, but even that, it's just, you think about the distances involved in that, it's just be unbelievable where the money would come
The
from.
rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And even in the federal government's broke too, so you don't know where it's gonna happen. The country.
Yeah, but they can print.
That's true.
They got the printing press up and running pretty well these days.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And there is
right.
money floating around from all this, COVID impact factor,
Sure
this
there
or
is.
that for infrastructure. So there may be, but not for that, but maybe for some of this other stuff, we can get some money to do it too. We'll see.
Yeah.
The third item on this, this is something I keep running into because, as you know, I pick up litter along Main Road, and I'm becoming absolutely convinced that a lot of that stuff is due to the fact that it's not from trash anymore like it used to be. It's from the recycle bins, because people put out the little bins are always overflowing. And if there's any kind of wind, stuff blows out of there. So I'm not going to belabor this, but I think what we need to think about is there some way we can still collect the recycling materials, but not have this problem. And of course, the first thing somebody told me was, yeah, just give us a bigger bin. But I'm not convinced they wouldn't wait till that's overflowing and put it out, and then the same problem occurs, just at a larger scale. So
I ended up buying, Tom, from the town, was at a real discount. I don't know if it was $30 for big 45, 50 gallon.
I love mine
Beautiful recycle.
with wheels.
You just rolled it right out. It was
Yep.
beautiful.
right, but I've
It's
seen some
smart.
of those, and they tend to be overloaded too, with the lid not even shut, because there's so much stuff in there. The lid is just kind of sitting on top of the overstuffed
That's because
stuff.
It's too lazy to bring it out every week. That's the other
Right.
Yeah.
problem.
Right, they just
That's the
bring it
bottom
out
line.
once it's full. So
Yeah,
No.
another option would be like the trash, right? They put it in bags, and I think that's cut down tremendously on the amount of trash that blows around, unless an animal rips it open or something. But we're told we
Yeah.
cannot bag the recycling, because then when it gets to the Johnston place,
Because it's
they
plastic.
they have to manually open those bags. They don't want to do that. So
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is, but I'm opening it up. We can think about it between now and maybe the next meeting. And if we get any good ideas, we can bring it up to the council and try to suggest it.
Well, Tom, there may not be a problem, because with all the shelves getting empty, there won't be anything to recycle.
By the way, did you see there was an article about all the little nip bottles? It was in the Providence Journal about a week ago.
I was in Newport Daily News too.
Yeah, I didn't realize
guess-
that those are not recycled. They go right into the trash when they get delivered to the recycling place in Johnson because they do not go through the system depends on blowing the things around, and they're too dense. They're too, the amount of plastic compared to their size doesn't allow them to be blown around easily.
Yeah,
So
they're
they end
talking
up
about
just
getting rid
trashing.
of them.
Yeah, they end up trashing them anyway. They're not recyclable, even
Yeah.
though the plastic could be recycled. So,
Which means the
Speaking of
end
that,
of my
that's what-
driveway should be clear.
and the
Swear,
road's safer
I'm
too.
that far away from the liquor store that they all end up at the end of my driveway.
Speaking of
There
that,
are a
that's what
lot
Same
just
guy.
in the parking lot of that North Tiverton Liquors. Yeah. Anyway, if we can
Speaking
think
of
of something to maybe help with this, I don't know what the answer is, but it would be really appreciated if there's some way that we can do that. But maybe human nature just defeats the whole thing. But you could have thought that about trash before too, and now I don't think trash is anywhere near the problem. So
Yeah.
Speaking of that, NIPS, that's the one that Peter Moniz sent me an email tonight saying, see if the Conservation Committee could maybe write a letter to the state, whoever, I'm not sure to what legislature group. that
You know what,
we-
Tom?
The NIP removal and banning in the state of Rhode Island.
You know what, Tom? You're fighting the liquor companies to,
I-
that
right.
is a battle royal.
Yes, I know.
the other thing that
Yeah.
article said that was very interesting to me, but they didn't follow up, is that they said there is a litter tax on those containers. And it makes me wonder, where does that money go? I don't think it goes to the towns. It doesn't go to us or me or a group that picks up the trash. I mean, where does this
the
litter tax go?
The general
General
fund, like
Street.
everything else goes.
Well,
The
I
gen-
dread that, but I think you're right. But maybe the answer is, I hate to, maybe they need to start putting some sort of, like maybe a 25-cent thing on it to return them back. And maybe people won't throw them away as much.
Yeah,
That may be the other way to do it. I don't know.
But is
Right.
what Mona's brought up tonight, Peter, I guess Peter.
Yeah, oh no, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
We should, maybe a letter coming from you as a conservation, just a simple letter saying we endorse this plan. And I sent you a copy, each of you, the copy of the Providence Sunday Journal article. I didn't know you saw it or not, but I just sent it an email about 6 o'clock tonight or so. Or 6, whatever it was, sometime. So
Anything that
maybe that's
reduces
what-
litter, I'm in favor of. And those
Yeah.
tend to be a good portion of what you pick up.
yeah.
And if
Well,
we're
they're-
going to
they're
write to
working
them,
with it.
sorry.
Well, they're still trying to review it and approve, I guess, that law. So maybe a letter from the Conservation Committee would be worth something to them, saying, "Hey, we endorse this NIP because it's been a major problem in Tiverton, and it's something that should be addressed. Either ban them or put a severe tax on them, a 50-cent tax or something like that, which could be used to dispose of them in some way."
Or
But
just it's
I hate the
refunded
idea-
if you turn them back into where you bought them.
Yeah, but unfortunately, they can't be recycled. So what does it end up doing if they keep using them? They just go in.
Well, if they
to
return them,
some-
they could just throw them, in the garbage there, but at least they're not on the roads.
I understand. Unfortunately, that's not an environmentally good, but those who use them probably could care less.
But they're not recycled, even if they make their way to the recycling place in Johnson.
Yeah.
The article said they trash them when they're up there.
Yeah. It's
How
just
about
that more
requiring
plastic-
that they make them into glass?
What was that, Liz?
How about require that the nips have to come in glass bottles?
Yeah.
But then,
Well, they
because a
used
lot
to.
of them are thrown out of cars, you get tons of broken glass all along this. I don't know. I think I'd rather have the plastic. But the other problem with them too is that they're so small. They go down the storm drains and they end up in the bay, and then they break down.
Yep.
And that's one of the sources of the microplastics that you read about that
Yep.
gets in the fish and
Yeah.
gets in the food and in the water. So it's really important not to let them become litter. And I think a lot of people do the right thing. They put them in bins, but they blow around. Some of them throw them out of cars, you're right, but I think some of it, because it'll be around a driveway, and I think they're originally in a bin and they somehow blew out. And I don't know how you fix that, except maybe people could be a little more caring about their property maybe. And okay, they blew out this time, I'll put them back in. Hopefully next time they take it, but don't always do that. So, all right, if that's, I'd be happy to write something to endorse that kind of an idea, if that's something that would like to see.
Well,
Maybe,
it's not going to hurt. Yeah.
Okay, all
you know,
right,
You
I'll
guys are
write
doing
something
it.
out and send it.
It's either that or bring back prohibition.
yeah.
That worked well, didn't it?
Yeah, sure did.
Kennedys did very well during Prohibition.
Some people know how to take advantage of anything.
Yep.
All right, moving along.
right.
Update of the website. We've been asked to take a look. Every group has been asked to take a look at their specific commission website. Yes, there is a specific commission website. We don't have much on ours because basically nobody really takes responsibility for it. So it's very generic and some things are out of date. But one thing that I thought of that could maybe make ours of interest and valuable, and it came up as a result, we received a Freedom of Information Act request along with several other commissions related to the Bourne Mill. Somebody was interested in anything relating to the wetlands there and permits and things like that. And I know we had some stuff on that, but all the records are sort of kind of in my basement, and some of them got wet a few years back and got a little bit moldy, so I threw them out. And I think we lost some of that stuff, but it's maybe like 5% of the records. Might have been this stuff, who knows? I found some stuff. But anyway, we have some reports that are very valuable, probably very difficult to find. There's the Berger study on the sewers for the town back in the 70s that people still refer to, but there's only a few copies of that still around. We have one of them. There are a couple that are studies of Stafford Pond and some of the other ponds that URI has done over the years that you'd be very hard pressed to find anywhere else. So my idea was that could look into trying to find a place that I could bring these to and have them scan them in and turn them into a PDF, and then put the original back together again. And then we could put some of these kind of rare documents on our website that are still of interest to the environment and things in Tiverton. It might cost us a little bit to do that, but like we said, we haven't spent a lot of our money. So we have money available for this. And if anybody has a recommendation on a good place that they know of that does this, I can bring, I think of a couple of them right off the bat of these documents that we could probably do and put on the site. And the town's willing to help us, kind of jazz up our site and all that. So if somebody wants to take responsibility for it and at least, think of other things we can do that would be useful too, that would be great. But I think this is one of the things that way, if there is another issue or somebody gets on the commission, just doesn't want to keep the records, like younger people, if it's not digital, they don't keep it. If it's paper, they tend to trash it. Some of these, like I said, they're one of a kind now, and it would really be helpful for future studies to know what they found, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And we may have the only copy of these documents now in town. And so it would be very useful to put them on the site. We could put other things on the site too. If there are presentations and things that we've given, like some of Tom's stuff on the tanks, or maybe that aquaculture thing from tonight, or things like that. We have options to do that. But I guess I'd like to try to get our website a little bit more up to date, maybe a little more useful for people in the town. And that's why I put that there. So if anybody has any other ideas, or if you know of a company that does this sort of digitization of documents for a reasonable fee, let me know, and I can look into that with these and at least get that part of it going.
I mean, that's not a thing Staples does, right, Tom?
I don't know. I've never had to use the service, but if somebody knows if they do or they don't, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that.
They all have that kind of like a plastic binding that, so and they have the little square holes. So I want to have them put it back together after they scan it. But I don't want to have to scan one page at a time. I want it home as like a one and that. So And if they do the back-to-back ones, I want them to do it right so that it's not upside down. You know, each page is right side up.
The town doesn't have a automatic scanner like in a town hall by chance?
I'd have to
You think
check.
they
I
would-
can email Chris on that and see what they say, or the town clerk.
Yeah.
But if not, if somebody
Seems
does
like-
know of a commercial site, let me know for backup.
I mean, sure, a lot
can
of
ch-
documents.
I can check. I can check with Staples because I do a lot there, so
Okay.
I know the manager of
See what I
copy
can
and print.
find.
I'll ask him. So basically, Tom, what you're looking to do is take paper copy and turn it into a digital.
Yeah, it could be like 100-page, report like we see a lot of times, and put
Got
them
it,
on the site. Yeah.
Need a scanning service.
I'll inquire about it.
I'll
Did the
see what I can
school ever
find.
do anything like that, Liz? Did the school ever have a service that did that?
Not that I remember. We always used to do it by hand.
Yeah, that's kind of a drag.
Yeah,
Unless somebody's in detention and you can say, okay, you could either scan this in for us.
Oh,
or go to
God.
detention.
these things don't work on kids. I was even
Oh.
thinking of senior projects, but even senior projects now with
Forget
COVID,
it.
Yeah. all
yeah,
right.
trying to get the kids to do anything. I've been listening to what's going on, and it's like, I don't even want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. People
Okay.
are dropping
Nope.
like flies up there. It's awful.
All right. Well, if anyone does come across a place that does that or hears of
Yeah, I'll
one,
look
let
around.
me know, because I've got some candidate documents and we can do other.
There's got to be a service around.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Are they double-sided or single?
Most are double-sided front and back.
yeah.
It just makes it a little more difficult. I guess.
Right. That's why I said they got to make sure when they do it that, because sometimes you get this rather than that.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating
I
when the
understand.
page is
Yeah.
upside down.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right. So we did aquaculture under old business. So the last one was the oil delivery. When I looked at the minutes, I saw I was supposed to do that. I haven't done that, but I will. But I'm telling you, I do walk the road frequently, and there are more trucks than ever now. Even trailer trucks full. We are one of the hubs for oil in the immediate area. I think for Aquatic Island and for points even to the east into Massachusetts, all those tanks that are down kind of towards the border with Fall River. So I'm really, really getting concerned that if there were to be a spill or a truck tips over and that stuff leaks, that we don't have the equipment in town to clean it up, but we should, because the facility is here and these trucks are on our roads. All of them have to go through our roads to get to where they're going. And there's all this talk about, well, we need a ladder truck. Maybe we need to turn that around and say, no, you don't. We need some sort of a hazmat spill vehicle so that if there is a leak or an accident with one of these trucks, we can respond quick enough so it doesn't get out into the bay through drains and things and cause a real pollution
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
So
Good
still got to
point.
follow up on that. I dropped the ball, and but I'll get back on it now that hopefully we'll have some more meetings. Okay, that gives us to landfill recycling committee. Anything new? Have they been meeting at all?
Not at all, Tom.
Do we know if the new what do they call it? The new place is going to be on time. The new, not landfill, but what do they call that? I'm having a Biden moment. What do they call that?
Recycling?
The recyclable?
Yeah, the recycling and trash place that they're going to build in the
Up in the park.
the industrial park, right? Transfer station.
Yep.
That's the word. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
Transfer,
Yeah, keep thinking about it. It'll come.
I'm too young for this to start having those moments. But anyway, do we?
No, it's
do
an
we have any
overload moment.
Do we have any idea if that's still on schedule? I haven't heard.
No, it's
You
not.
know what? I find it very odd. I find it very odd to that there's been no real reach out or meetings. I did speak with Rick Rogers a while back. It's probably, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 weeks now.
Okay.
And it was sort of like, well, we're having discussions, and I think it was with Pa. Pa was looking for some money for a study, So I guess it was between Rick, Parr, and the council. That's all I can say. I can put a call into Rick and ask him, I guess. And give a, if I have anything to report, I'll bring it up at your next meeting. But it seems to me that it'll be a minor miracle if they're ready for whenever the closure starts. It just doesn't seem to be, I don't know, the top of the news, I guess.
Chris, can you comment on that? Do you know
Sure.
if are we on schedule or?
Just to clarify one thing, it's not a transfer station. It's a
Oh, sorry.
recycling center. There will be no trash going to it. It will
That's
only
right.
be recyclables.
So if you miss trash day, you're out of luck.
Well, that's, is what it is, but we will no longer be taking trash. It'll be picked up on the roadside, or you'll hire your own firm to do it. That's all there is to it.
So things like demolition debris and tires and all that are all going to be privately handled.
Well, there are some things that we will take. I don't think we'll take demolition debris, but like the mattresses, the electronics, the cardboard, the glass and bottles, cans, any of the metals, those kind of things will be recyclable. That we'll take those. And whether or not it's going to be done, it was proposed in the industrial park. There is some leeway for us to keep it operating at the top of the landfill for a little while, even though we'll be taking that, they will not be taking trash. They'll stop taking trash in November. That's a done deal. That we're all done with this. We've actually, council awarded Monday night the contract for the landfill closure to the bidders. So we are closing it. It's coming.
So people will not see a difference though. So the trucks will just pick up the bags like normal, but they'll take them to Johnston.
Correct. Now it'll be more money, but it is what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's tipping fees and there's extra transportation fees to get it up there. But the only thing we will be doing is recycling. That's it. We're not allowed to do trash. We would have to go get another landfill license to operate trash, and they're just not going to grant that.
No.
So.
Okay.
So there's, and there's other discussions about where it would be in the industrial park, because there is currently a tentative offer on the park. So we might be moving to a different spot within the industrial park.
Oh, so it's not even being built yet then?
No,
No.
it's been on hold because of a tentative offer.
Is that like that's the big kind of distribution center for some unnamed private company thing?
I have no idea where you got that information. That's, I can't disclose what it is, but,
Can't confirm nor deny, right?
can't confirm nor deny it. So we're
Okay.
under a, pretty tight lip agreement with these people.
We understand. Okay. Well, all right. So that kind of answers the question then. Thanks for the input.
Okay.
I guess so things will be a little bit different and
So we will be getting some more information out about it, and the recycling committee does have to stop to get back to work on this, because we really need to look at what we can and cannot recycle.
right. And we got to keep that rate up, otherwise the tipping fee goes up.
Oh yeah, the tipping fee is going up anyhow.
But if you don't recycle enough, they hit you even more.
Yeah.
They look
but
at your percent recycled, and if it's low, they
So the Johnston landfill is increasing their trash tippings, and their recycling issues are, we get no money back from them like we used to. But it does have an impact on how it affects the trash loads, because if any of those loads are contaminated, they reject the loads and it goes in as trash, and we pay for that.
but if they're not, then that doesn't, you get charged for the recycling.
It just goes in as clear recycling.
Okay. Well, we're all for whatever we can do to help publicize keeping that going the right way.
It's been like moving a battleship, but it's getting there. It's every week it gets closer and closer to doing what's right by closing that, doing it appropriately, and then trying to get this recycling stuff squared away temporarily. DEM will allow us to run it temporarily at the landfill, which gave us a little bit more of a window to get this figured out where we're going.
And of course, we've always had this concern about dumping. And if we don't, for example, we can't do demolition debris anymore, we just wonder if that's going to start increasing around town when
It will. We expect to see, there'll be some more, litter and issues like that around town. We kind of expect to see that, but it's a growing pain of going through this.
Okay, well, I guess if there's
So
a
what-
way to just maybe let people know that these are firms that can handle that stuff so that they can't say, you didn't tell me where to go or something like that.
Oh, I
mean,
know.
endorse them, but at least give
One of
us,
our bigger issues to deal with, quite frankly, is going to be the yard waste.
right.
And that's kind of, one of the issues we're trying to figure out how to resolve.
Is
Yes,
that considered recycling or is that not?
So we're hoping to do it within the recycling complex where we would be able to shred it, pile it, shred it, mulch it, make it into something that can be reutilized, or we may just see, I haven't put this before the council yet, but we might try to look at trying to find a private vendor in town who would be willing to take on yard waste and make a business out of it for developing local mulch.
Right.
Boy, I'll tell you, that's a big if because, man, that's a lot of stuff in the course of a year.
Yeah, it is.
But that's because it's free. If there was a slight fee or something, then maybe not. But right now you can take that up there and there's no charge if you're a Tiverton resident.
Right.
But it does cost because they have to rent the tub grinder and all that to
Yep.
get rid of it.
Oh, yeah.
There's a cost to running it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay. Well, appreciate the update. Thanks.
Okay.
Tree committee, anything new on that, Tom?
No, same issue. We haven't had any meetings. I'm planning to talk to Peter tomorrow and see what we'll do. Maybe plant some trees somewhere this spring. It's just that we all have comorbidities. We're all old, so we kept away from each other. Peter, myself, and Connie, and we just
Without planting trees, you're safe. You're just out amongst nature, right? Something like that.
yeah. But we're gonna do something because you just can't not let it just drop.
Yeah, I wish we could have helped some of these big solar companies that, that plow under so many trees to have to replant some somewhere.
Yeah, it is shameful.
You know how they sometimes make people create wetlands if they destroy wetlands? It sounds like, especially if you're gonna do like 60 acres, I mean, that's a lot of just bulldozing.
That is a lot of,
Yeah. But anyway, well, that's going to be up to this new committee. It's something we can suggest that if they're going to do that, that maybe they need to consider having some sort of compensation where they replant some blighted areas or something.
Mm-hmm. Like all of
I don't know how that would work.
like our quarries that are supposed to be recovered over with dirt and replanted after they get done. Yes.
If they're ever done. Yeah.
If it's ever done, it's never going to be done. All that, supposedly that was in some of the, I remember looking at some of the quarry information in town where they were supposed to put dirt over it and it plant it. But, the guy on Brayton Road, he's got still runs his motorcycles up there. And then you got that one that's breached up at the Tiverton Materials, where we know they breached the water table.
Some of that's tough though, right? Because they have those issues with they found one of them. There's an old ordinance from the State House that said we couldn't interfere when they were doing the quarry.
Yep. Yeah.
So there's all kinds of weird things like that too.
No one touches.
Anyway,
no one touches that.
Time for a date. That's for another discussion. We can always bring that back up, but
yeah.
Okay, that covers the agenda. Any last words for tonight's meeting?
No, nice talking to you.
Nice to see and hear from everybody. It gets tougher, with the virus. Hopefully that's going away and get back to normal in the near future. And thank you, Mr. Cotter, for being the host and setting it up. We always appreciate that. We're nowhere near as good as you are with all these modern things. So,
well, believe me, it took me a while to get acclimated to it. Just let me know when you send me an email when you want to do your next one, and I'll get you set up for it.
Okay, we really appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay.
Have a good night. Everybody be safe. Stay healthy.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Nice
Good night.
to talk to everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Rich, I'm sorry, I didn't see your email before.
Yeah, that's fine, Tom. It was no big deal. I found what I was looking for with the address to get on the phone.
Okay, yeah, I just, when I was looking to see the article that I sent one time. I says, oh, Rich King here.
Industry, you know.
Yep, I agree.
All right, bud. Nice talking to you. Stay safe. Stay healthy.
Thank you. Same to you, my friend. I'll
Okay,
see you later. Yeah,
Right.
bye.